All right, here's the content video for Genesis chapter 15, our Bible study this week. Sometime after the battle in the previous chapter, the word of the Lord came to Abram. Now, this wording, the word of the Lord, uh, suggests that in this instance, Abram is acting as a prophet. The first words he receives in this prophecy are encouragement, reminding him of both the promise of protection and blessing. And for the first time, Abraham speaks to God, or more accurately, we could say he questions God. This may be why he needed encouragement. He cannot see how the promises can be fulfilled when he is childless. And Abram reveals that according to human law, in the time of Abram, when a couple did not have a child, they would adopt someone to be an heir, not only to inherit the family wealth, but also to ensure that their proper burial. Because they were childless, Abram and Sarai had settled on Eliezer of Damascus, a servant in their household. God makes it clear that it will not be Eliezer who will be their heir, but a son from Abram's own body. He told him to go outside and look at the stars in the sky and said, "So shall your offspring be." Abraham believes the promises of God, and so he is credited as being righteous. Adam and Eve did not believe God when he told them not to eat of the tree of good and evil. In contrast, Abram believes God's word and as a result is declared righteous. We see here that faith is of primary importance to God. He desires for his people to respond positively to his word, and in this way we see that Abram is a spiritual father of us all. God also reminds Abram of the promise of the land. Abram responds again, "How can I know that this will happen?" We've talked about this before, that there was all kinds of other people in the land, and no single spot of the land was given to Abram at this time. So what happens next seems very strange to us, but made perfect sense to Abram. God tells him to take a calf, a goat, and a sheep, along with a dove and a pigeon. The animals were to be split, and the birds were placed across from each other, making a path between the parts. Now, there is evidence that this was a way that men entered into a covenant with each other at that time. They would make an arrangement and walk between the parts to seal the covenant. There is an ancient Assyrian text that seems to make reference to something very similar to this, and we also see it in Jeremiah 34, kind of around verses 18 and 19, where we are told the people of the land who walk between the pieces of the calf. In any case, the passage explicitly states that after the fire pot passes through the pieces, that the Lord made a covenant with Abraham. How can Abraham know that he will receive the land? Because God has entered into a covenant with him. God has given him his word. These covenants were made to call as witness the gods in order to add weight to the words of men. How much more when God himself enters a covenant with a man? The fire pot and the blazing torch represent God's passing through the pieces. The other thing that God does to assure Abram, as he is waiting for God to show up, he is told slash shown a vision. It is dark and dreadful because on the one hand he shows the promise fulfilled, but on the other he sees the pain that his descendants will go through to get there. The reason for all this is also given, because the sin of the Amorites had not reached its full measure. This reminds us that God is just and that the peoples God would remove to give Israel the land were themselves being removed from it because of disobedience. Abram and the descendants could not take the land until the sins of the occupiers had reached the point of judgment. So that's just an overview of chapter 15 of Genesis. Hope to see many to the Bible study this week.